Dead America, Tales from Las Vegas, The Assault on Lake Las Vegas, by Derek Slayton. Chapter 1. 6 hours had passed since the assault on the supercenter. The sun had slipped below the horizon less than an hour ago, leaving behind faint streaks of red and orange that clung to the western sky, like the last embers of a dying fire. Landry stood at the front door of the store, his shoulder pressed against the frame as he watched those final dashes of color fade into darkness. The glass was cool against his palm, and he could see his own reflection staring back at him. A ghost caught between two worlds. His mind kept circling back to what was about to happen. In a few hours, he would be crossing back into Lake Las Vegas, but this time, he wouldn't be working for Sammy. This time, he would be leading an assault against the man who had controlled the community with violence and fear. The thought should have filled him with satisfaction, but instead, it just sat in his gut like a stone. Behind him, the supercenter bustled with quiet activity. Survivors moved through the aisles, some settling in for the night, while others prepared for whatever came next. It was a stark difference from the chaos of earlier in the day, when bullets had flown and bodies had fallen. Now there was an eerie calm, the kind that came before something big. Footsteps approached from behind, and Landry glanced over his shoulder to see Connor walking toward him. The man had cleaned up since the firefight, his face no longer streaked with dirt and sweat. He looked almost normal, except for the assault rifle slung over his shoulder, and the hardness in his eyes that hadn't been there before the world ended. "How are you holding up, Landry?" Connor asked. Landry let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He turned to face Connor fully, his arms crossing over his chest. "About as good as I can be. It's probably a good thing we're doing this on the fly, because I'm not so sure I'd want to go through with it if I had time to really think about it," Landry said. Connor let out a laugh, the sound short and sharp. He reached out and patted Landry on the shoulder, the gesture meant to be reassuring. "Sometimes that's the only way to approach these things," Connor said. "Any word from the soldiers yet?" Landry asked. "They should be here any minute," Connor said. Landry nodded, his gaze drifting back to the darkening sky. The last traces of color were gone now, replaced by the deep purple of twilight. Soon, it would be full dark, and they would be on the move. "And what about Matt?" Landry asked. As if on cue, Connor's phone began to ring. The sound cut through the quiet, and Connor pulled the device from his pocket. He held it up so that Landry could see the caller ID on the display, Matt's name illuminated on the screen. "I swear that boy has a sixth sense whenever his name is mentioned," Connor said. He tapped the screen and brought the phone up to his ear, his expression shifting to something more serious. "How are we looking, Matt?" Connor asked. The voice that came through was tinny, but clear enough to make out the words. "It's a shit show, to put it mildly," Matt said. Connor let out a sigh. He tapped the screen again, switching the call to speaker so that Landry could hear. He held the phone between them, the glow from the screen casting shadows on their faces. "Would you care to elaborate?" Connor asked. "Yeah, I'm down here at the south gate at Lake Las Vegas, and there's a few dozen zombies just hanging out," Matt said. Landry leaned in closer, his brow furrowing. "Where are they exactly?" Landry asked. "Right outside the gate. It's like they know there's something they want just on the other side of it," Matt said. A smile crossed Landry's face, the first one he'd felt in hours. "That's great news," Landry said. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and when Matt spoke again, confusion was clear in his voice. "It is?" Matt asked. "Wait, it is?" Connor asked. "Yeah, there's only a small window at the guard shack that looks out into the road. If there's a horde of those things, they won't be able to see us make our move," Landry said. "Well, I'm not quite as excited about it as you are, but if you think it's good news, we'll roll with it," Matt said. As they talked, headlights pierced through the darkness outside. A vehicle pulled into the parking lot, the engine's rumble growing louder as it approached. Connor glanced toward the approaching SUV, then back to his phone. "Sit tight, Matt. We'll be down there soon," Connor said. "I'll be here," Matt said. The line went dead, and Connor slipped the phone back into his pocket. The SUV rolled closer, its headlights washing over the front of the store. Landry squinted against the glare, trying to make out how many people were inside. "Hopefully they're driving a clown car, because when you said you were calling in the military, I was expecting more than 5 people," Landry said. Connor's expression darkened, his lips pressing into a thin line. "So was I," Connor said. The two of them stepped out onto the sidewalk, the cool night air hitting them as they left the store. The SUV pulled to a stop in front of them, the engine cutting off with a final sputter. For a moment, there was only silence, and then the doors opened. 3 men stepped out. The first was Corporal Sullivan, a solid man with the bearing of someone who had spent years in uniform. Behind him came Private Cooper, younger and leaner, with sharp eyes that took in everything around him. The third man was different. He looked disheveled, his clothes hanging loose on his frame, and there was a wildness in his eyes that spoke of things seen and survived. This was Clyde. "Somebody call for some reinforcements?" Sullivan asked. The corporal walked over to Connor, who extended his hand for a shake. "It's good to see you, Sullivan," Connor said. "Likewise, Connor," Sullivan said. Connor turned, gesturing to Landry. "This is Landry, one of our inside men," Connor said. Landry stepped forward, shaking Sullivan's hand. The man's grip was firm, his palm calloused from years of hard work. As they shook, Cooper and Clyde walked up to join them. "What's up? I'm Cooper, and this is Clyde," Cooper said. Connor reached out toward Clyde to shake his hand, but the man flinched, his body jerking back as if expecting a blow. It took him a moment to relax, his eyes refocusing as he realized no threat was coming. He extended his hand slowly, the movement hesitant. "Are you all right, buddy?" Landry asked. "Yeah, I'm still just a little skittish," Clyde said. Connor studied the man, concern crossing his features. He didn't want to offend, but he also needed to know if Clyde could handle what was coming. "Don't take this the wrong way, Clyde, but are you up for this?" Connor asked. Sullivan stepped in before Clyde could answer, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "Clyde spent the first few weeks of this nightmare in the tunnels. He single-handedly killed about 100 of those things with a jagged piece of metal," Sullivan said. Clyde's expression shifted, a half-smile crossing his face. He shrugged, the gesture almost shy, and tapped the handle of a knife hanging from his belt. The blade looked well used, the edge honed sharp. "We'll take all the help we can get. Welcome aboard, Clyde," Landry said. Landry nodded to the former homeless man, respect clear in his eyes. Anyone who had survived the tunnels had earned their place in this fight. Connor waved them all toward the entrance. "Come on, we're set up over here," Connor said. The group walked into the supercenter, their boots echoing against the tile floor. They moved through the aisles toward the cafe area, where a couple of tables had been pushed together. A large piece of poster board sat in the middle, covered with a crude drawing of the Lake Las Vegas community. The lines were rough, but clear enough to show the layout, the streets and gates marked with thick black marker. Santiago stood beside the makeshift map, his posture relaxed but alert. When he saw the group approaching, he waved them over with a welcoming gesture. "Please, come get comfortable. If you need any food or beverage, please help yourself at the table over there. We have plenty to go around," Santiago said. Connor gestured to the man, making introductions. "Everybody, this is Santiago. He's going with us as well," Connor said. "Welcome to the party," Sullivan said. Santiago nodded, a slight smile on his face. The group settled into chairs around the table, the scrape of metal legs against tile filling the air. Landry moved to the head of the table, his hands resting on the edge as he looked down at the map. He took a breath, then began to speak. "Okay, everybody, I'll make this as quick and concise as I can. This is Lake Las Vegas, a massive, sprawling community that most of us wouldn't have seen the inside of unless we won the lottery or were hired to clean the houses within. Today, however, it's ruled with an iron fist by a man named Sammy Torino," Landry said. He paused, letting that sink in. Around the table, the soldiers leaned in, their attention focused. Now Sammy himself isn't all that dangerous, especially given how much his daily alcohol consumption has increased of late. However, he has a small, very loyal army protecting him and the community, Landry said. Cooper leaned forward, his elbows resting on the table. "How loyal are we talking?" Cooper asked. "Loyal enough to take a bullet for him," Landry said. Cooper's expression didn't change, but there was a shift in his posture, a subtle straightening. "That's not what I'm asking. I have no doubt that they'll fight to protect him. But what are they going to do once we put a bullet in his head?" Cooper asked. Landry looked over to Connor, who shrugged. It was a question he'd been turning over in his own mind. "It's a solid question," Connor said. Landry considered it for a moment, his fingers drumming on the table. A few of them may need to be convinced to stand down, but I think at the end of the day, they'll be happy to not be kicked out of the community, Landry said. So all we have to do is cut the head off the beast. I like that, Cooper said. Landry pointed to the south gate on the map, his finger tapping the spot where they would make their entry. This is our entry point. It should be lightly defended. Once we're inside, we'll get a status report from my man Ace, who is going to be doing his best to thin their ranks from within, Landry said. He moved his finger across the map, tracing the route they would take through the neighborhood. He pointed out a few key locations, marking them in his mind as he spoke. Sammy's house is here, but before we mount an assault, one team is going to go rendezvous with Ace and help him lock down the armory, Landry said. His finger moved again, tapping another spot on the crude map. Most of the guards have a limited loadout, so if we can control the weapons, we can get the upper hand. The rest of us will prepare the assault on Sammy, Landry said. He looked around at the faces gathered at the table. They were hard faces, faces that had seen death and survived. They were ready for this. Any questions? Landry asked. The group collectively shook their heads, the response unanimous. There was nothing more to say. The plan was simple, and simple plans were often the best. All right, everybody get geared up. Let's go make sure Sammy has seen his last sunrise. Chapter 2. Two SUVs rolled through the darkness, their headlights cutting through the night as they took the long way around to the southern end of Lake Las Vegas. The route added miles to the trip, but it kept them away from the main roads where Sammy's people might be watching. As they pulled into a nearby neighborhood, Connor tapped the brakes and killed the lights. Both vehicles slowed to a crawl before stopping a few blocks away from the meetup spot. The engines cut off, leaving only silence. Car doors opened with soft clicks, and boots hit pavement as the group departed. Landry led the way, followed by Connor, Santiago, Private Cooper, Corporal Sullivan, and Clyde. They moved through the darkened streets without speaking, each man keeping watch on the houses and yards surrounding them. Windows stared out like dead eyes, dark and empty. Yards that had once been manicured lawns were now overgrown, the grass gone wild in the weeks since the world ended. Every shadow could hide a threat. Every sound could be the shuffle of feet or the scrape of nails on concrete, but the streets remained quiet as they walked, the only noise coming from their own careful footsteps. It took a few minutes to reach the target house at the edge of the neighborhood. The structure sat alone at the end of a cul-de-sac, its backyard facing out toward the open field that separated them from Lake Las Vegas. Connor stepped up to the front door, his knuckles rapping against the wood in a coded pattern. 3 quick knocks, a pause, then 2 more. A moment later, the door opened, revealing Matt. He was shorter and stockier than Connor, built like a wrestler with broad shoulders and thick arms. A smile crossed his face as he stepped aside to let them in. I was wondering when you'd be getting here, Matt said. Normally I'd say we hit traffic, but I don't think that excuse flies anymore, Connor said. The 2 men let out a chuckle as they walked through the darkened house. The interior was stripped bare, furniture pushed against the walls to create clear pathways. It had the feel of a place that had been abandoned in a hurry, personal items scattered on tables and floors. They moved through the living room and kitchen, heading toward the back door. Matt pulled it open, and the group stepped out onto a covered patio. Beyond the yard stretched a large field, and in the distance they could see the rear gate of the Lake Las Vegas community. Even from here, they could make out the shapes moving in the darkness near the wall. Zombies, dozens of them, clustered around the entrance. Have a look at what we're dealing with. Not much has changed in the last few hours, Matt said. Landry stepped up to the edge of the patio, his eyes scanning the field. The guard shack was just visible, a small structure beside the gate. Light spilled from its windows, a beacon in the darkness. Nobody has been out to try and thin their numbers? Landry asked. Nope. If it wasn't for you saying there were guards there, I would swear nobody was home, Matt said. Trust me, there are guards there, but if they haven't been out to thin the numbers, we might have some loafers, Landry said. Sullivan stepped up beside them, his brow furrowed. Loafers? Sullivan asked. Yeah, this guard post is typically used as a punishment. Sammy doesn't let them use the golf carts, so it's about a mile hike to get down here. There's no kitchen, no heating or cooling, just a small box that you're stuck in for 12 hours, Landry said. Cooper crossed his arms, a grin spreading across his face. Let's hope that means they're asleep at their posts then. It'll make it easier to put them down, Cooper said. Landry turned to face the young soldier, his expression hardening. No, we give them a chance to surrender. If they raise their weapons, put them down. But if this is going to work long term, we have to show these people that we're different than Sammy, Landry said. Cooper wasn't thrilled with the directive, but he gave Landry a nod anyway, keeping whatever protest he had to himself. So how are we getting in? Connor asked. Landry gestured toward the wall, his hand sweeping across the field. The easiest way is over the wall. It's nothing but golf course on the other side. I figure 2 of us can handle the guards, secure the gate, take down those things, and we're in, Landry said. Connor studied the layout for a moment, then nodded. Santiago, go with Landry over the wall, Connor said. Santiago raised his chain-wrapped fists, clinking them together. The sound was like rattling bones, the metal links heavy and solid. We just need a boost, Santiago said. I'm game, Matt said. Clyde stepped forward, his hand resting on the knife at his belt. I can help too, Clyde said. Sullivan turned to look at him, concern crossing his features. Clyde, why don't you stay here and let me do it? Sullivan asked. Because we're going to draw a crowd once we get out there. And I know how to handle a crowd, Clyde said. He tapped the handle of his knife a few times, the gesture casual but meaningful. Sullivan studied him for a moment, then nodded. The man had earned his place, and the corporal wasn't going to take that from him. As soon as we have the gate secure, I'll flick the light on and off a few times, Landry said. And once that happens, we'll be out there giving you a hand, Cooper said. Matt and Clyde exchanged a nod, and the 4 of them moved out through the back door. Landry and Santiago led their boosters through the yard, moving away from the gate. They kept low, using the darkness as cover as they walked. Once they were down 30 yards, they cut across the field and street, approaching the concrete wall from an angle. The wall was 8 feet tall, a barrier that had once separated the rich from the poor. Now, it was just another obstacle to overcome. Both Matt and Clyde knelt down, lacing their fingers together to create footholds. Landry placed his boot in Matt's hands, feeling the man's grip tighten. Santiago did the same with Clyde. There was no countdown, no signal needed. They'd all done this kind of thing before. In one smooth motion, Matt and Clyde boosted them upward. Landry's hands found the top of the wall, his fingers gripping the rough concrete. He pulled himself up and over, Santiago right beside him. They landed with a thud on the other side, the impact jarring but controlled. The noise was enough to draw attention. Matt looked up and saw 4 zombies turning in their direction, their dead eyes locking onto movement. They were still 30 yards away, shambling across the sidewalk with that awkward gait that marked them as creatures rather than people. Matt and Clyde stood their ground. They drew their blades, the metal whispering against leather sheaths. The zombies would come, and they would be ready. Connor told me about you, Matt said. I hope he said good things, Clyde said. He said enough to know that I'm going to follow your lead, Matt said. Clyde smirked, the expression almost feral in the darkness. He held his knife low and ready, then started walking forward to meet the threat head-on. On the other side of the wall, Landry and Santiago moved up quietly toward the guard shack. The boxer stayed behind Landry, who had his rifle up at the ready. His finger rested beside the trigger, ready to move in an instant if needed. They moved swiftly across the grass, their footsteps silent on the manicured lawn. They stopped 10 yards from the structure, pressing themselves low as they tried to get a sense of the situation inside. The guard shack was small, barely large enough for 3 people to stand comfortably. Through the windows, Landry could see shadows moving. 2 people, maybe 3, shifting around inside. The light from within spilled out onto the ground, creating a pool of illumination that they would have to cross. Landry motioned for Santiago to follow him up. They moved slowly, covering the distance yard by yard. As they got within 5 yards, the door to the shack opened and 1 guard stepped outside. He was young, maybe 20, with a cigarette already between his lips. He fished a lighter from his pocket and flicked it, the small flame bright against the darkness. The duo stopped, hugging the shadows and hoping they wouldn't be seen. Landry kept his rifle trained on the guard, his breathing slow and controlled. He inched forward, closing the distance 1 careful step at a time. The guard took a long drag on his cigarette, oblivious to the danger creeping toward him. As Landry got within a couple of yards, the guard finally looked over, His eyes widened as he noticed the movement, and then he went completely still at the sight of a gun pointed at him. The cigarette nearly fell from his lips. Landry pulled one hand off the weapon, putting a finger to his mouth. The message was clear: stay quiet. The man continued trembling, his whole body shaking like a leaf in the wind. He didn't dare take a step. Landry whispered to Santiago, keeping his voice barely above a breath. "Go secure our friend," Landry said. Santiago nodded, moving up outside the line of fire. He stayed low, his body coiled like a spring as he approached. But as he got close, the door to the shack opened again. The other guard stepped outside, reaching for his own pack of cigarettes. "Damn it," Landry said. The second guard spotted Santiago right away. His hand shot to his handgun, fingers wrapping around the grip. Santiago darted forward, but the man was already drawing. Landry didn't hesitate. He squeezed off a single round, the shot cracking through the night. The bullet hit the window of the shack, spider webbing the glass and sending shards flying. It was enough to startle the guard, his hand freezing on his weapon. That was all the time Santiago needed. He closed the distance in a heartbeat, his fist driving into the first man's gut with the force of a sledgehammer. The guard doubled over, gasping for air. Santiago spun, delivering a combination to the second man, a left hook to the ribs, a right cross to the jaw. Both men went down hard, hitting the ground in pain. Landry rushed up to the guards, his rifle sweeping the small shack. It was empty, just a table and a couple of chairs inside. As he cleared it, the radio on the counter clicked on. Static hissed through the speaker, and then a voice came through. "South Station, report. That sounded like gunfire," the voice said. Landry grabbed the radio, yanking it from the counter. He knelt down beside one of the guards, pressing the barrel of his rifle against the man's head. The metal was still warm from the shot he'd fired. "You tell him everything is fine, that you were just having some fun with a zombie. Do it now, or the last thing you're going to hear is me pulling this trigger," Landry said. The guard nodded frantically, his eyes wide with terror. He motioned for the radio. Landry clicked it on and held it up to the man's mouth. "Hey man, yeah, we're all good down here. One of those things came out of the neighborhood and I just wanted to have a little fun," the guard said. There was a pause on the other end, and for a moment Landry thought they were made. Then the voice came back through, annoyed but accepting. "Copy that. Just cut it out for the night," the voice said. "Will do. South Station out," the guard said. Landry clicked off the radio, hooking it to his belt. He reached inside the shack and flicked the light on and off a few times, the signal clear. Then he turned back to the guard. "You did the right thing," Landry said. The guard's voice was shaky when he spoke. "What are you going to do to us?" the guard asked. "That depends on you. If you want to live through the night, you're going to tell me where some rope is. And when we're done doing what we need to do, we'll set you loose," Landry said. Santiago loomed over them, his chain-wrapped fists still ready. "Or if you want to, you can be my sparring partner. The choice is yours, my friend," Santiago said. The two guards glanced at each other before looking into the guard shack. The first one spoke up quickly. "There's no rope, but there are some handcuffs in the drawer," the guard said. "Keep an eye on them. I'll grab the handcuffs," Landry said. Santiago nodded, positioning himself between the guards and any escape route. Landry stepped into the shack, pulling open drawers until he found what he was looking for. A pair of handcuffs gleamed in the drawer, standard-issue restraints. As he grabbed them, he glanced out the small window, curious about what was happening outside. What he saw stopped him cold. Instead of a wall of zombies pressing against the gate, he saw Clyde and Matt laying waste to the horde. The homeless man went wild with his knife, like a man possessed. He moved with a fury that bordered on madness, cracking skulls and driving his blade through eye sockets. Matt fought beside him, matching the pace as best he could, but even he seemed to be struggling to keep up with Clyde's relentless assault. Bodies littered the ground, dark shapes sprawled on the pavement. The two men worked like a machine, methodical and brutal. "Clyde, I'm glad you're on our side." Chapter 3. The strike team walked across the golf course, their boots silent on the manicured grass. They stuck to the shadows, moving between trees and sand traps, using the landscape as cover. The moon hung overhead, casting pale light across the fairways and greens. In the distance, the clubhouse loomed, a sprawling structure of glass and stone that had once catered to the wealthy elite of Las Vegas. As they got within a few hundred yards of it, Landry motioned for them to stop. He held up a closed fist, and the group froze in place. Landry looked at his watch, the face glowing faintly in the darkness. It was nearly 1 a.m. "Hang tight, I need to make a call," Landry said. He pulled out a radio, his fingers finding the dial and tuning it to channel 16. He said a silent prayer to himself, hoping that his friend had made it back alive. Then he clicked it on. "Ace, do you copy?" Landry asked. There was a long pause that seemed to stretch into eternity. Static hissed through the speaker, and for a moment Landry thought the worst. Then a voice came through, faint but unmistakable. "I'm here," Ace said. Relief washed over Landry like a wave. He let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Thank God. Are you okay?" Landry asked. "Yeah, I'm at the docks inside the boathouse, just waiting on you," Ace said. "All right, I'm sending a few people your way. I'm going to take the others and get into position," Landry said. There was a brief pause on the other end before Ace spoke again, his voice carrying a note of warning. "Be careful, because Sammy wasn't happy when I told him what happened. He not only sent out a strike team, but upped the neighborhood patrols," Ace said. Landry's worry grew. More patrols meant more eyes, more chances to be spotted. He glanced at the others, their faces shadowed in the darkness. "Do we need to adjust the plan?" Landry asked. "No, I don't think so. The guards are more perturbed that they had to get out of bed in the middle of the night than they are on edge about a potential attack," Ace said. A small smile crossed Landry's face. Tired guards were sloppy guards. "Copy that. Hang tight. Reinforcements are on the way," Landry said. He pocketed the radio before turning to the others. He pointed to them as he called their names. "Matt, Cooper, Clyde, I need you 3 to get over to the docks. Ace will get you over to the armory. When we come out of the neighborhood, just stick to the right. It'll take you straight to the docks," Landry said. The 3 men nodded, and Private Cooper took command of the team. His posture shifted, becoming more focused and authoritative. "All right, stick close to me, and don't do anything unless I do," Cooper said. Matt raised an eyebrow, a hint of amusement in his expression. "This isn't my first rodeo," Matt said. Clyde glanced between them, his hand resting on the knife at his belt. "I think his statement was meant more for me than you," Clyde said. He gave Matt a wild look, followed by a grin that made Matt pause. There was something unsettling in that expression, something that spoke of barely controlled violence. "Fair enough, let's get this done," Matt said. The trio headed out, moving at a quick pace across the golf course. Cooper got them to the edge of the neighborhood, where a low fence separated the course from the residential streets. They hopped over it one by one, landing in the yard of a giant mansion. The house was dark, the windows reflecting nothing but the night sky. The lights were off inside, which wasn't unusual for this time of night. Even so, they moved quietly toward the front of the house. Cooper held up a fist, and they all took a knee as the whine of an electric engine filled the air. A golf cart rolled down the street, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Cooper stayed in the shadows, watching carefully. 2 guards sat in the cart, one driving, while the other slouched in the passenger seat. Cooper studied them, noting that the passenger's eyes seemed to be closed, his head bobbing with the movement of the cart. "I think Ace was right. They aren't taking this very seriously," Cooper said. "If we step out of line, I guarantee they will be taking it seriously," Matt said. Cooper gave him an affirmative nod. The assessment was solid. Bored guards were one thing, but they would snap to attention the moment they saw something wrong. He waited another few seconds after the golf cart vanished from view before breaking the group from cover. The trio ran hard on the sidewalk, their footsteps echoing in the quiet night. They got a few houses up until they could see the docks in the distance, a wooden structure jutting out into the dark water of the lake. A golf cart pulled up to the boathouse, pausing for a moment. Cooper reacted fast, pushing the group off the sidewalk. They jumped the fence into one of the yards, their boots hitting grass as they scrambled for cover. They ran to the back of the house, pressing themselves against the wall as the golf cart rolled by on the street. "It's only 30 more yards up. We can make it," Cooper said. Matt looked at him, doubt clear in his expression. "Are you sure?" Matt asked. "The patrols are a couple minutes apart. We got this," Cooper said. "We're following you, just don't get us killed," Matt said. Cooper listened intently for the sound of the electric engine. It faded into the distance, moving further down the street. Once it was far enough away, he motioned for the group to move again. The trio ran down the sidewalk, their pace quick but controlled. They paused briefly at the edge of the docks, looking out toward the street in front of it. No patrols were visible, but they knew that could change at any moment. The docks stretched out before them, the wooden planks weathered and gray. Cooper motioned for them to follow. Their footsteps echoed on the wood, the sound loud in the stillness. They had barely made it onto the docks when the door of the boathouse opened up. Ace stood in the entrance, his face tense as he waved them in. Come on, Ace said. The three men rushed inside, and Ace pulled the door shut as soon as they were through. He secured the latch, then walked to the other side of the room. The boathouse was small, with tools scattered on a workbench and a few boats covered with tarps. Did anybody see you? Ace asked. I don't think so, Cooper said. Okay, let's hope so, because I'd rather not start fighting just yet, Ace said. Same here, Cooper said. Ace looked at the three men, taking in their faces. He didn't know them, but if Landry sent them, they had to be solid. So what do I call you guys? Ace asked. I'm Private Cooper. This is Matt and Clyde, Cooper said. Matt gave a friendly wave, raising his hand in greeting. Clyde didn't make much eye contact. Instead, the homeless man looked around at his surroundings, taking stock of what was within reach. Outside of a few tools sitting on the table directly in front of him, not much stood out. A hammer, a screwdriver, a wrench. Simple tools, but in the right hands they could be deadly. Okay, we're going to give it a few minutes before we head out. The patrols always start out hot and heavy, but after a while they lose interest when nothing happens, Ace said. As if on cue, the whine of an electric motor filled the air. One of the golf carts pulled up outside, the sound of its engine growing louder as it approached. You were saying? Matt asked. Ace held up a hand, his voice calm but firm. Everybody relax and just keep looking at me, Ace said. Footsteps could be heard on the wooden planks as two guards walked toward the boathouse. Ace hoped they would keep walking to the water, maybe check on the boats and then leave, but that wasn't happening. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. The door to the boathouse was pushed open, the hinges creaking as it swung inward. Two guards stepped inside, one of them talking forcefully. His tone was filled with condescension, as if he was relishing the ability to talk down to civilians. Now, what do we have here? Somebody's someplace they're not supposed to be, the guard said. He trailed off as soon as he noticed Ace. His expression shifted from smug to confused. Ace? Just what in the hell are you doing in here? The guard asked. Ace held up his hands in a placating gesture, trying to defuse the situation. Listen, guys, I can explain, Ace said. His eyes went wide as both guards pulled their handguns. The sound of metal scraping against the plastic holster hit Clyde's ears, and that was all it took for him to go into a frenzy. In a flash, he reached down to the table in front of him, grabbing the hammer and swinging it around in a single motion. The tool caught one of the guards square in the jaw. There was a sickening crack, and teeth flew through the air like pieces of shattered bone. The guard's head snapped to the side, blood spraying from his mouth. The other guard was startled at the sudden movement. He swung his handgun around, trying to get a shot off, but Clyde's hammer came down on his thumb. The impact was brutal, the bone shattering on contact. The guard's hand spasmed, his finger squeezing the trigger involuntarily. The gun went off with a deafening crack, and the bullet slammed into the back wall. It missed Matt by inches, punching through the wood and sending splinters flying. Matt fell to the ground, his arms covering his head. Clyde stepped forward, shoving the broken-handed guard back into the wall. The man slammed against the wood, his gun clattering to the floor. Clyde turned back to the first guard, who was trying to yell through a broken jaw. The sounds coming out of his mouth were garbled and wet, more animal than human. The homeless man delivered a forceful strike to his forehead. The hammer connected with a dull thud, and the guard's eyes rolled back in his head. He collapsed to the ground, unconscious before he hit the floor. Clyde turned back to his partner, raising the hammer again. Another blow to the forehead sent the second man to the ground in a heap. Clyde stared down at them, his chest heaving. He could see they were still moving, their bodies twitching with shallow breaths. He raised the hammer above his head, preparing to finish what he'd started. But before he could bring it down, Cooper rushed over and grabbed his arm. "We're okay, Clyde. We're okay," Cooper said. Clyde looked into Cooper's eyes, searching them. The soldier's gaze was steady, calm, reassuring. It seemed to soothe something in him. The homeless man took a few deep breaths, his body slowly relaxing. The hammer lowered. "I'm sorry if I acted out of turn. I heard those guns being pulled and I went into fight or flight mode. And, well, you know how that worked out," Clyde said. Cooper nodded, patting his comrade on the arm. The gesture was meant to be reassuring, and it seemed to work. "You might want to hang on to that hammer. You put it to good use, that's for sure," Cooper said. Clyde nodded, gripping the bloody tool. He gave the private a smile, but there was something hollow in it, something that didn't quite reach his eyes. Ace moved quickly over to the boathouse door, peering out into the night. He scanned the street, looking for any sign of movement. The gunshot had been loud, too loud. Someone had to have heard it. "There's going to be another patrol coming through here in a matter of minutes. We have to move now." Chapter 4. Connor, Landry, Santiago, and Corporal Sullivan waited until the other group was out of sight before moving up to the neighborhood. They watched as the trio disappeared into the darkness, heading toward the docks. Then they turned their attention to the task at hand. Landry led the way, with everyone else trailing behind. They moved quietly through the shadows, keeping low as they approached the first row of houses. The structures loomed before them, massive estates with manicured lawns and expensive architecture. These were the homes of people who had never worried about money, who had lived lives of luxury while the rest of the world struggled. Now they were just buildings, occupied by people too afraid or too comfortable to leave. They got up to the first house, which had a television flickering in the living room. The blue glow pulsed through the windows, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Landry poked his head above the windowsill, glancing in and spotting a middle-aged couple asleep on the couch. A movie played on screen to an audience of nobody. Landry kept them moving, getting them up to the side of the house before taking a knee in the shadows. They pressed themselves against the wall, waiting on the next patrol to roll by. He could feel his heart beating in his chest, the adrenaline starting to build. "As soon as we know where we are in the patrol rotation, we'll be on the move," Landry said. "How far up is Sammy's house?" Connor asked. 3 blocks. When we break from cover, we're going across the street then, to the west through the yards," Landry said. The men nodded as they stayed in the shadows, their weapons ready. Waiting was always the hardest part. Time seemed to slow down, each second stretching out like an eternity. It took a solid minute before the whine of the electric engine pierced through the night. The foursome retreated further into the shadows, making sure they were fully out of view as the golf cart rolled by. Landry noticed the sleeping passenger guard, his head lolled back against the seat. He shook his head at the unprofessionalism. These were supposed to be Sammy's elite, the men guarding his community. Connor gave him an amused look. "I would write him up, but it would seem a bit hypocritical given we're about to go kill the boss," Landry said. The two of them chuckled quietly, the sound barely audible. They turned back to the street, watching as the golf cart continued its lazy patrol. As soon as the vehicle vanished from view around the next corner, Landry led them out. The group hopped the fence, landing softly in the yard and moving swiftly across it. Their boots made almost no sound on the grass, each man trained to move quietly. A moment later, they were in the backyard, turning to the west and seeing nothing but moonlit grass stretching ahead of them. "Let's move," Landry said. The 4 of them ran hard along the yards, their pace quick but controlled. They hopped the fences between houses, clearing each obstacle with ease. The properties were massive, each yard larger than most people's entire lots. They got to the end of the block just as the patrol rolled on by, headed toward the next intersection. As soon as the golf cart made the turn, Landry was over the fence. The others were close behind, dropping into the street one by one. They had just made it into the open when a gunshot cracked through the night from the direction of the docks. The sound was unmistakable, sharp and loud, echoing across the water and through the quiet streets. "Was that a gunshot?" Sullivan asked. "Did our guys get made?" Connor asked. The group hesitated for a moment too long, uncertainty freezing them in place. That hesitation cost them. The security patrol that had passed them reversed course, the whine of the electric motor growing louder as it came back around. The guards spotted them from the intersection 20 yards up. "Contact! Contact!" Sullivan said. He raised his rifle, his training taking over. He squeezed off a volley of rounds toward the guards, the muzzle flash bright in the darkness. The bullets ripped through the plexiglass windshield, punching through the thin material like paper. They hit the 2 guards in the chest, the impact jerking their bodies backward. The guards convulsed for a moment, their hands going to their wounds. Then the driver slumped over the wheel, his weight pressing down. His foot came to rest on the gas pedal. The golf cart sped ahead, out of control. It veered to the right, the wheels turning sharply. It jumped the curb with a jarring thud and slammed into a fence. The wood splintered and cracked, the cart coming to rest against the wreckage. Sullivan kept his aim on them, making sure they were down for the count. In 2 of the houses behind them, the foursome noticed lights switching on inside. Windows that had been dark suddenly glowed yellow. The gunshots had undoubtedly woken people, and not all of them were civilians. The group looked around the neighborhood, spotting more houses with lights coming on. One after another, the street was lighting up. "I'm guessing those aren't all civilian houses?" Connor asked. "No, we have to move right now." "Right now," Landry said. He turned and took off to the west, still hoping to make it to Sammy's house before they got overwhelmed. They barely made it across the street before shots rang out from one of the houses behind them. Bullets peppered the sidewalk as they ran, concrete chips flying into the air. The rounds came close, too close. The group dove over the next fence, their bodies flying through the air before hitting the ground hard on the other side. "Sullivan, give us covering fire on my mark," Landry said. He gave his partner the nod. Sullivan understood, popping up from behind cover and opening fire on the house across the street. He noticed a muzzle flash coming from an upstairs window, the barrel of a rifle protruding from the darkness. He focused his fire on that spot, sending rounds through the window. "Let's move," Landry said. He led the group down the backyard of a house, his rifle at the ready. His finger rested beside the trigger, ready to engage at a moment's notice. As they hopped the next fence, the back light came on. Landry noticed 2 guards at the back patio door, trying to slide it open. The glass reflected the light, showing their faces twisted in alarm. Without hesitation, he raised his rifle and popped off a few rounds toward them. He aimed high, not wanting to kill them if he could avoid it. The bullets pierced through the glass, spider webbing it with cracks. The sound of shattering glass filled the air. It was more than enough to get them to retreat behind cover, their hands up to protect their faces. The 4 of them continued running hard, getting a few yards up as the guards began pursuing them from behind. They could hear shouts now, voices calling out to each other. More guards were joining the chase, flanking them on the side streets. As they approached the last house on the block, they could see a couple of golf carts rolling up on the street ahead. The vehicles moved to block their path, guards piling out with weapons raised. Landry fired toward the vehicles, his rounds hitting the ground just in front of the wheels. Dirt and concrete kicked up, forcing the men inside to scamper across the street in search of cover. Landry, Connor, and Santiago took a knee by the fence. Sullivan continued firing at the guards trailing them, his shots measured and precise. "We can't stay out here," Connor said. "Yeah, no shit, Connor," Landry said. "Where can we go?" Santiago asked. Landry looked around for a solution, his mind racing through options. None of them were good. Then he looked to the house in the yard they were in. As he did, the backlight clicked on, bathing the patio in harsh white light. He raised his rifle toward the patio, his finger moving to the trigger. A figure emerged from the door, his hands shooting up in a panic as soon as he saw the gun pointed at him. The man was young, with wild eyes and messy hair. "Don't shoot! Don't shoot!" the man said. Landry squinted, trying to make out the face in the light. Recognition hit him like a punch to the gut. "Brody?" Landry asked. "Landry, yeah, it's Brody. Get in here," the man said. Landry didn't hesitate. He got up and ran for the open door, suppressing fire over the fence as they moved. The rounds kept the guards pinned, giving them precious seconds. The rest of the group didn't question it, simply falling in line and following him inside the house. Sullivan brought up the rear, firing back toward their pursuers. His rifle barked again and again, the muzzle flash lighting up the yard. He gave them the time they needed to get inside. As soon as Landry was through the patio door, he rushed to the front of the house. Connor was close behind, his boots pounding on the tile floor. They took a knee at the living room windows, looking out to the street. "Damn it," Landry said. He and Connor sat there, helpless, as 4 golf carts rolled up in front of the house. The vehicles stopped in formation, blocking the street. Guards flowed out, getting to defensive positions. They took cover behind the carts, behind trees, behind anything that would stop a bullet. Their guns were aimed toward the house, a small army ready to open fire. "How are we looking?" Sullivan asked. He came up behind them, breathing hard from the run. His rifle was still up, ready to engage. "We're surrounded," Connor said. "So, what do we do?" Santiago asked. The boxer stood near the back door, his chain-wrapped fists ready. But chains wouldn't do much against rifles. Landry stared out the window, his mind working through the situation. They were trapped, outnumbered, and outgunned. The guards outside weren't making a move yet, probably waiting for orders. That gave them time, but not much. "We do the only thing we can do. We hold tight and hope to God that Ace can come through for us." Chapter 5. Ace drove the golf cart up toward the armory, the electric motor whining as he pushed it as fast as it would go. The vehicle wasn't built for speed, but he was getting every ounce of performance out of it. Private Cooper sat in the passenger seat beside him, his rifle held low but ready. Matt and Clyde rode in the back, both men keeping their heads on a swivel and looking for other guards. The streets were still quiet, but that wouldn't last. The gunshots had been loud, echoing through the community, and people would be responding. Ace took a corner hard, the golf cart's wheels squealing against the pavement. He could feel the vehicle wanting to tip, but he kept it steady. Cooper gripped the handle above his seat, his knuckles white. In the back, Matt and Clyde braced themselves, their bodies leaning with the turn. The armory sat near the center of the community, a squat building that had once been a maintenance shed for the golf course. Its walls were cinder block, painted a dull beige that had faded over the years. A single metal door provided entry, and small windows near the roof let in minimal light. Ace knew the building well. He'd been there dozens of times, checking inventory and making sure everything was accounted for. He knew exactly where everything was stored. "It's just up ahead. As soon as I park, get inside and keep your heads down," Ace said. The other men nodded as Ace drove the golf cart up onto the sidewalk. The wheels bumped over the curb, and he pulled right up to the entrance. He darted out from behind the wheel, his hand diving into his pocket and pulling out a set of keys. He found the right one and jammed it into the lock, twisting it hard. All 4 men got inside, moving quickly through the door. Ace slammed it shut behind them and flicked the interior lights on. Fluorescent bulbs hummed to life overhead, casting harsh white light across the space. He looked out the window, his eyes scanning the street. Relief washed over him when he didn't see any guards coming their way. The others let out impressed whistles at the sight of all the firepower. The armory was packed wall to wall with weapons and ammunition. It was more than they'd expected, more than anyone would need for simple defense. "Jesus, was Sammy planning for war?" Matt asked. The walls were lined with racks filled with assault rifles, shotguns, and handguns. Each weapon had been carefully maintained, the metal gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Boxes of ammunition were stacked on shelves, more rounds than they could use in a year. There were even a few crates marked with military stenciling, gear that had probably been looted from a National Guard depot or stolen from an armory somewhere in the city. The men walked around inspecting the collection with a mix of awe and concern. This was the arsenal of a man who planned to hold on to power by any means necessary. Ace stayed by the door, his eyes fixed on the window, keeping watch for any sign of guards approaching. "Arm yourselves because there's a good chance we get company sooner or later," Ace said. The men nodded and did as instructed. Cooper grabbed an assault rifle, checking the action and finding it clean. Matt picked up a shotgun, the weight of it solid and reassuring in his hands. Clyde was the exception. He looked at the weapons, then down at the hammer in his hand. He seemed quite happy with his choice. Matt started to say something to the homeless man, his mouth opening to suggest he take a gun. But he kept quiet after remembering the brutal beating Clyde had inflicted on the last set of guards they'd encountered. The hammer had worked just fine. The radio on Ace's belt crackled to life, Landry's voice coming through the speaker. "Ace, are you there?" Landry asked. Ace grabbed the radio, clicking it on. "Yeah, we're at the armory. Are you ready to take out Sammy?" Ace asked. There was a pause, and when Landry spoke again, his voice was tight with tension. It's going to have to wait because we have problems, Landry said. Ace's stomach dropped. He could hear it in his friend's voice. Something had gone wrong. What's wrong? Where are you? Ace asked. We're at Brody's house, surrounded, Landry said. Damn it, can you fight your way out? Ace asked. Not without some help. I think every guard in the community is on us, Landry said. Ace ran a hand through his hair, his mind racing through options. They needed a way to draw the guards off, to give Landry and the others a chance to break free. Okay, sit tight. I'm going to figure something out and get back to you, Ace said. Just make it quick, because we're going to be in trouble as soon as Sammy gets here, Landry said. Ace clipped the radio to his belt before moving through the armory. He ignored the guns, his eyes scanning the shelves with focused intensity. He was looking for something specific, something that would turn the tide. His hands moved quickly, pushing aside boxes of ammunition, spare magazines, and cleaning supplies. What are you looking for? Matt asked. Ace didn't respond, still focused on his search. He knew it was here somewhere. Sammy had shown it to him once, bragging about how he'd lifted it from one of his construction sites before the world ended. He tossed stuff out of the way, boxes and equipment clattering to the floor. The sound was loud in the confined space, but he didn't care about the noise. He muttered curses to himself as he went, his frustration building with each empty shelf. Ace, talk to me, Matt said. Ace continued to ignore him, moving deeper into the armory. His hands swept across another shelf, knocking over cans and spare parts. Then he paused, his hand stopping on a large box shoved into the back of a shelf. It was covered with a tarp, hidden from casual view. He pulled the tarp away and saw the warning labels on the side. A grin spread across his face, wide and almost manic. Come to Papa, Ace said. He pulled out the large box, grunting with the effort. It was heavy, the contents shifting inside. He turned around and set it on the table in the middle of the room with a solid thud. The others moved over to it, looking in and seeing a large amount of explosives, blocks of material wrapped in plastic, detonators with wires trailing from them, and remote triggers sitting in foam cutouts. That looks dangerous, Cooper said. Yeah, Sammy took some stuff from his construction company and stashed it away for a rainy day. They use this stuff to take down buildings, Ace said. Matt stared at the box, his brow furrowed in confusion. What in the hell are we going to use it for? Matt asked. Ace met his eyes, his expression deadly serious. If it can blow apart concrete and steel, I'm sure it will work on flesh and bone, Ace said. You didn't answer my question, Matt said. Ace let out a sigh, shaking his head. He gestured toward the door, toward the golf cart sitting just outside. We have a golf cart out there, and this stuff is remote detonated, Ace said. Cooper's eyes widened, understanding dawning on his face. Nothing like an IED to get the party started, Cooper said. Matt looked between them, his expression shifting from confusion to disbelief. You want to make a car bomb out of a golf cart? Matt asked. If you got a better idea, then I'm all ears, Ace said. Matt thought about it for a moment, his mind working through alternatives. He struggled to think of something better, but nothing came. They were out of options, and Landry needed help now. So what? You're just going to drive it right into the middle of them and detonate it? Matt asked. Something like that. Sammy still thinks I'm on his team, so I can pull up, park it at the back of the pack, and have one of you detonate it when I'm in position, Ace said. Clyde stepped forward, his voice quiet but clear. Position to do what? Clyde asked. Ace turned to look at him, his jaw set with determination. To take Sammy out, Ace said. Matt crossed his arms, doubt clear on his face. Do you think that can work? Matt asked. We're going to find out, but we have to move fast, Ace said. The rest of the men nodded in agreement, knowing that this was their best option. They didn't have time to come up with something better, and Landry was counting on them. Suddenly, Clyde reached forward, grabbing a handful of the explosive material. His fingers wrapped around one of the blocks, lifting it from the box. Everybody reacted at once, their bodies tensing. Whoa, easy there, man, Matt said. His hands came up in a placating gesture, as if he was trying to calm a wild animal. Cooper stepped forward, his voice measured and calm. Don't worry, Clyde. We're going to get this set up, Cooper said. Clyde stared at them, and for the first time the crazed look in his eyes faded. It was replaced by something else, something that looked almost normal. He held the explosive carefully, his grip firm but controlled. "I know how to set this up," Clyde said. The others looked at him with curious expressions. This wasn't what they'd expected. Clyde let out a bit of a sigh, his shoulders sagging slightly. "You know I wasn't always homeless, right? I worked construction for a number of years. Hell, I wouldn't be surprised if I worked on some of Sammy's projects before," Clyde said. The rest of the men stepped back, giving him a nod. If Clyde knew what he was doing, they weren't going to stop him. Cooper gestured to the box, allowing Clyde to take possession of the explosives. "How long do you need to get set up?" Cooper asked. Clyde looked at the materials, his eyes scanning the detonators and wiring. His mind was already working through the process, remembering skills he'd learned years ago. "I'll have that thing ready to blow in a few minutes," Clyde said. The men nodded, and Clyde gathered up the box. He headed outside to do his job, the door closing behind him with a soft click. As he left the armory, the others looked to Ace. "So, how do you want to do this?" Matt asked. Ace moved to the window, looking out toward the street. He could picture the layout in his mind, the streets and houses between here and Brody's place. "Brody's house is on the corner, so you should be able to set up across the street and have a good line of sight," Ace said. Matt shifted his weight, his hand tightening on the shotgun. There was uncertainty in his posture, a hesitation that spoke to his doubts. "I'll be honest with you, I'm not a great shot from distance, or from close up. There's a reason why I'm beating stuff to death with a wrench," Matt said. Ace turned to face him, his expression reassuring. "It's okay. Most of these guards have never had anybody firing back at them, so once that golf cart goes boom, they're going to be ready to run at the first sign of trouble," Ace said. Matt nodded, taking some comfort in that. He didn't need to be a marksman, he just needed to make noise and create confusion. "I think I can handle squeezing a trigger," Matt said. "All right, let's get loaded up, because time is not on our side." Chapter 6. Outside of Brody's house, the guards fortified their position. They moved with practiced efficiency, using the golf carts as cover, and retreating to a stone fence that ran directly across from the property. 15 armed men and women, all of them aiming their weapons at the house. They crouched behind their barriers, rifles trained on the windows and doors. Some looked nervous, their fingers resting on triggers. Others appeared calm, almost bored, as if they'd done this 100 times before. The fence gave them good cover, the stone thick enough to stop most rounds. The golf carts provided additional protection, their bodies positioned to create overlapping fields of fire. Anyone trying to leave the house would be caught in a crossfire with nowhere to run. Inside, Landry looked out through the front window, getting the lay of the land. He stayed low, his head just high enough to see over the sill. The guards were dug in tight, their positions well chosen. Connor was situated at the back door, making sure the guards on that side didn't make a move on them. He held his rifle steady, watching the shadows in the yard for any sign of movement. Santiago was in the middle of the house with Brody, ready to rush to whichever side needed him. The boxer stood with his chain-wrapped fists hanging at his sides, his body coiled and ready. Brody looked pale, his back pressed against the wall as he tried to stay out of the line of fire. His hands shook, and his breathing was rapid and shallow. This was more violence than he'd ever seen in his life, and it showed. Upstairs, Corporal Sullivan took a knee by the front bedroom window. He positioned himself to the side, using the wall as cover, while he surveyed the scene below. His rifle rested on the sill, the scope giving him a clear view of the guards across the street. He studied their positions, memorizing faces and calculating angles. Then he yelled out to the group downstairs, relaying what he saw. "They're dug in pretty good across the street, but if they start shooting, I have shots on a few of them," Sullivan said. His voice carried through the house, loud enough to be heard, but not so loud that it would carry outside. "What are they waiting on?" Connor asked. "They're waiting on Sammy," Landry said. He knew how the man operated. Sammy wouldn't miss this. He'd want to be here for the confrontation, to see Landry's face when he realized there was no way out. The man's ego wouldn't allow him to stay away. The group didn't have to wait long. Sullivan spotted an opulent golf cart rolling down the street from the west. It was different from the others, customized with leather seats and chrome accents. It screamed wealth and excess, even in the middle of the apocalypse. "I think the guest of honor just arrived, coming in from the west," Sullivan said. Landry adjusted his view, watching as Sammy rolled up in his golf cart. The vehicle came to a stop just shy of the line of guards, the brakes squeaking slightly. Sammy climbed out, taking a few steps over to a couple of the guards that were behind their carts. He was dressed in expensive clothes, a silk shirt and designer pants that looked ridiculous in the current situation. He talked to them for a moment, his hands gesturing animatedly. Then he turned to the house, his voice rising to a yell. "Well, Landry, I had my suspicions about you, and it turns out I was right. Now, why don't you do us all a favor and just come on out here? I promise to make it quick for your friends if you do," Sammy said. Landry leaned closer to the window, making sure his voice would carry. "And what about me?" Landry asked. "Oh, Landry, we both know that any chance you had at mercy went right out the window when you took the side of thieves and murderers," Sammy said. His tone was mocking, dripping with contempt. He stood with his arms crossed, confident in his position. He had the numbers, he had the weapons, and he had nowhere to be. Time was on his side. "The only thieves and murderers were the ones you sent out there to terrorize people. I'm glad I tricked them into an ambush out there," Landry said. Sammy's anger grew, his face flushing red. The mocking tone in Landry's voice had struck a nerve. "Just know, Landry, that every man that doesn't come back, that's another day you're going to have to live. And trust me when I say, you're going to be praying for death on day one," Sammy said. "I'm going to start praying for death right now if I have to listen to you talk anymore," Landry said. Sammy let out a string of curses, the words foul and angry. He was livid at the disrespect, at being talked down to by someone he considered beneath him. His hand went to his belt, where a radio hung. Before he could order an all-out assault, he heard the whine of an electric motor coming up from the west. He looked over, his expression shifting from rage to confusion as he spotted Ace riding up. Ace's golf cart rolled down the street at a steady pace. He looked calm, his posture relaxed as he drove. He parked right behind Sammy's golf cart, the two vehicles lined up one behind the other. He jumped out and moved quickly over to the boss, who didn't look pleased to see him. "And just where in the hell have you been?" Sammy asked. "Down by the docks, dealing with some uninvited guests," Ace said. Sammy gave Ace a curious look, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. Something didn't feel right about this. Ace should have been with the strike team, not wandering around the docks. "Oh, really? Why don't I believe you?" Sammy asked. Ace stood his ground, shrugging as he stared Sammy down. He was doing his best to bluff his way through the situation, keeping his expression neutral and his voice steady. "If you don't believe me, then you can ride on down to the docks and see for yourself. I beat two guys senseless with a hammer, left them bleeding on the ground," Ace said. The lie came easy, the details specific enough to sound believable. He met Sammy's eyes, not flinching or looking away. Inside the house, Landry watched the exchange through the window. He couldn't hear what they were saying, but he could see Ace talking to Sammy. His heart was pounding, wondering if his friend could pull this off. Sammy stared Ace down, still not sure if he should believe him or not. The silence stretched out, tension building with each passing second. Then, with a smug smirk, he began speaking. "All right, if you want to be a good little loyal lapdog, put down your old commanding officer," Sammy said. He gestured to the house, the motion casual and dismissive. Ace looked that way, seeing movement in the windows. He could make out shapes behind the glass, people watching. He began nodding confidently before walking down the street a bit. "Where are you going?" Sammy asked. "I'm lining up my shot. Are you coming?" Ace asked. Sammy smirked at Ace's bravado. The confidence was appealing, the kind of loyalty he thought he'd bought with his protection and resources. He followed him down the street, walking 20 yards down from where they were. They were moving away from the main group of guards now, putting distance between themselves and the others. Ace waved off two guards who were behind a golf cart. The men looked at him with confusion, unsure why he was ordering them around. "Get on the other side of the line. Watch those windows, because I can guarantee that he's not alone in there," Ace said. The two guards were confused, glancing over at Sammy for confirmation. Sammy waved them off as well, backing up Ace's order. As soon as Sammy made his gesture, they ran back down the line toward Sammy's cart, their rifles held at the ready. Ace turned around toward the house, his body angled as if he was getting into a shooting stance. His hand moved down, seemingly adjusting his belt. In reality, he was reaching for his radio, clicking it on in a way that Sammy didn't see. His thumb found the transmit button. He spoke a little louder than normal as he got into position. "All right, we're kicking this off on my mark," Ace said. Sammy looked around, confused. He wasn't sure who Ace was talking to. There was no one else near them, just the two of them standing in the middle of the street. Before he could speak, before he could ask what was happening, Ace sent up the signal. "Let's do it," Ace said. An instant later, his golf cart detonated. The explosion was massive, a ball of fire and smoke that erupted into the night sky. The shockwave rippled outward, a wall of pressure that hit everything in its path. The sound was deafening, a crack of thunder that echoed off the houses and rolled across the lake. The blast nearly knocked them off their feet, the ground shaking beneath them. Windows shattered in nearby houses, glass raining down onto lawns and sidewalks. The golf cart was obliterated, pieces of metal and plastic flying through the air like shrapnel. Sammy's cart was caught in the blast, the back half crumpling from the force. Since he was expecting it, Ace managed to recover faster than Sammy did. The boss staggered, his balance thrown off by the shockwave. His ears were ringing, and his vision was blurred. He turned, stumbling in Ace's direction as he tried to orient himself. Ace dropped his rifle, which was slung around his shoulder. His hand moved to his hip, drawing his handgun in one smooth motion. He brought it up and planted the barrel at the base of Sammy's skull, the metal pressing against skin. He wrapped his other arm around the upper part of Sammy's body, keeping him in place. The boss tried to struggle, but Ace's grip was iron. Before the guards outside could recover from the detonation, several gunshots erupted. They came from inside the house, the muzzle flashes bright in the windows. Sullivan was firing from upstairs, his rifle barking as he engaged targets. Landry and Connor were shooting from ground level, their rounds accurate and controlled. More shots came from across the street, from the house where Matt and Cooper had set up. The two men opened fire on the guards, catching them in a crossfire. A couple of the guards sent panic fire back, their rounds going wild as they tried to find cover. Others turned tail and ran, abandoning their positions and fleeing into the night. The torrent of gunfire was short-lived. The guards who were still standing quickly noticed that Ace had Sammy at gunpoint. They froze, their weapons half raised, unsure what to do. "Put your guns down, or he's dead," Ace said. His voice cut through the ringing in their ears, loud and commanding. Sammy stared at them, his face twisted with rage and fear. He wanted to tell them to fight, to take Ace down regardless of the cost. But survival instinct won out. He gave a nod, slow and reluctant, getting them to lay down their weapons. Rifles clattered to the ground, handguns were placed gently on the pavement. Hands went up, palms open and visible. The fight was over as quickly as it had started. "We're clear out here, Landry," Ace said. "You son of a bitch. You're gonna wish you were dead by the time I'm done with you," Sammy said. His voice was hoarse, strained with emotion. The anger was still there, burning hot beneath the surface. "Save it, nobody cares," Ace said. He glanced over his shoulder, watching as Landry, Connor, and Santiago stepped out of the house. The first two men had their weapons at the ready, just in case anybody wasn't on board with the surrender. They moved carefully, checking corners and scanning for threats. Sullivan appeared in the doorway behind them, his rifle covering the guards from above. Landry walked over to Sammy and Ace, while the others spread out to make sure the guards were laying down their arms. Cooper and Matt emerged from across the street, moving to help secure the scene. The surrender was holding, but it was fragile. One wrong move could set everything off again. Landry stopped a few feet from Sammy, looking the man up and down. This was the tyrant who had ruled Lake Las Vegas with fear and violence. Now he stood with a gun to his head, powerless. "Sammy, I think it's time we talked about how things are going to work around here," Landry said. Sammy let out a growl, trying to form words, but the rage was preventing him from doing so. His mouth opened and closed, sounds coming out, but nothing coherent. Landry stood there, a certain amount of smugness present as he stared him down. He'd earned this moment, and he was going to savor it. "Are you done?" Landry asked. "My men are going to take you down, and when they do, I'm going to take my time with you. You have no idea what I'm capable of, what I've done. You don't get to where I am in this city without getting your hands dirty. And you're going to learn that the hard way," Sammy said. The words came out in a rush, spittle flying from his lips. He was desperate now, clinging to threats and bluster because he had nothing else left. Landry couldn't help but laugh at the impotent threat. The sound was short and sharp, cutting through Sammy's rant. Instead of responding, he pulled out his radio. He changed the channel to the guard's frequency, the one all of Sammy's men monitored. Then he clicked it on, bringing it up to his mouth. "To all of Sammy's guards, this is Landry, and I have an announcement. As of this moment, Lake Las Vegas is under new management." Chapter 7. The entire community came out of their houses, walking toward Brody's house in response to the request from Landry. They moved slowly, cautiously, unsure what they would find. Some wore robes and slippers, clearly roused from sleep. Others were fully dressed, having been too anxious to rest. The explosion had woken everyone, and the radio announcement had brought them all out. As the civilians approached, they could see most of the guards laying down their weapons in a pile. The rifles, shotguns, and handguns clinked together as they hit the ground, a metallic symphony of surrender. After depositing their weapons, the guards jumped the short stone wall surrounding a nearby yard, putting distance between themselves and the tools of their trade. As the weapons hit the ground, Cooper, Sullivan, and Matt secured them. They stood watch over the pile, their fingers hovering near the triggers of their own weapons. While the guards laying down their arms were clearly giving up, they didn't want to take any chances. One wrong move, one person reaching for a weapon, and the whole thing could go sideways. Standing in the front yard of Brody's house stood Landry and Connor, both of whom flanked Sammy. The former boss was restrained, his hands zip-tied behind his back. His anger from earlier had faded, replaced by a blank stare that seemed to reveal that he knew he had been bested. The fight had gone out of him, leaving behind only a hollow shell. The civilians gathered in the street, forming a semicircle around the property. There were dozens of them, maybe 100 people total, men, women, children. The entire population of Lake Las Vegas had turned out to see what would happen next. "Looks like everybody in the community is coming out," Connor said. His voice was quiet, meant only for Landry to hear. They stood side by side, watching as more people arrived. "I still have a few guards on the gates, just to be safe," Landry said. "I hope it's people you trust," Connor said. "They're ex-military and were here for a paycheck. I get the sense they don't care one way or another who is in charge, as long as they don't have to go outside these walls," Landry said. Connor nodded, understanding the logic. "Let's hope the loyalists feel the same way," Connor said. "Well, we're about to find out," Landry said. Once everybody seemed to have arrived, the murmuring of the crowd settling into an expectant silence, Landry, Connor, and Sammy walked toward the street. They moved as a unit, Sammy in the middle with his escorts on either side. Landry moved ahead of the pack, leaving the others behind. Connor stopped and grabbed Sammy by the shoulder, getting him to do the same. They stood there, a living monument to the old order that had just fallen. Landry turned to face the crowd. He took a breath, gathering his thoughts. This was the moment where everything could either come together or fall apart. He needed to get this right. "I know it's late, so I'll make this quick. I know that the last few weeks have been trying, and that at every turn Sammy made things worse for the majority of people here. Well, I am here to announce that his reign of terror is over," Landry said. He paused as some of the civilians let out a cheer. The sound started small, just a few voices, then grew as others joined in. Relief and joy mixed together, a release of tension that had been building for weeks. A few of them yelled insults towards Sammy, their voices dripping with venom. Weeks of pent-up frustration came pouring out. Then a man yelled over the crowd, his voice cutting through the celebration. "Give him to us," the man said. His voice carried barely contained rage, a fury that demanded satisfaction. The words hung in the air, and for a moment, the crowd went quiet. Then a few others joined the call for mob justice, their voices rising in agreement. They wanted blood, wanted to make Sammy pay for everything he'd done. Landry raised his hands up, doing his best to calm them. He understood their anger, shared it even. But this wasn't the way. "We're not going down that road. And trust me, you don't want his blood on your hands. He's going to get his justice," Landry said. The man who had started the call pushed forward, his face twisted with anger. "How?" the man asked. "He's being exiled from the community. We're going to give him a taste of the terror he's been inflicting on everyone," Landry said. The crowd murmured to themselves, clearly not impressed with that solution. Exile seemed too easy, too clean. They wanted to see Sammy suffer, wanted to watch him pay for his crimes. Landry could see the disappointment on their faces, the hunger for vengeance that wouldn't be satisfied. Before they could speak up again, Landry turned to address the now unarmed guards. They stood together in a loose group, separated from the civilians by an invisible line. Some looked defiant, others ashamed. All of them were watching Landry carefully, wondering what would happen to them. "And to you, Sammy's loyal servants," Landry said. He let the words hang there for a moment, making sure he had their full attention. They needed to understand that this was their one chance. "I'm giving you a choice. You can leave with him if you want, or you can stay and earn your place here in the community. For some of you, that might be easy. For others who let the power go to their heads, you're going to have a tougher road. Now, what's it going to be? Anybody who wants to go with Sammy, step forward now," Landry said. He stared them down for a good 10 seconds, waiting for anyone to move. The silence was heavy, oppressive. 10 seconds turned to 20, then 30. However, none did. No one spoke up, no one took a step forward. The guards stayed exactly where they were, their eyes fixed on the ground, or on Landry, but none of them moving towards Sammy. Finally, Landry nodded before glancing back to Sammy. A small smile crossed his face, satisfaction clear in his expression. "Looks like you're on your own, Sammy," Landry said. Sammy didn't respond, didn't react. He just stood there, disassociating from the entire situation. His mind had retreated somewhere else, somewhere safe from the reality of his fall. Landry turned back to the crowd, raising his voice to address everyone. "All right, that's all for tonight. I want everybody to head back home. There's a curfew until 8 tomorrow morning, at which point we'll have a community meeting at the clubhouse. Now go get some rest," Landry said. The civilians and guards alike began shambling away, headed back to their homes. They moved slowly, still processing everything that had happened. Some talked in quiet voices, while others walked in silence. The street began to empty, people disappearing into houses and closing doors behind them. As they did, the rest of the group walked over to Landry. Sullivan, Ace, Santiago, Matt, and Clyde formed a loose circle around him. They'd done it, pulled off something that should have been impossible. "Well said, Landry," Sullivan said. His tone was respectful, the compliment genuine. The corporal had seen plenty of speeches in his time, and he knew when one hit the right notes. "Yeah, I was getting a little misty-eyed there," Ace said. His tone was playful, teasing. The tension of the night was finally breaking, giving way to relief and exhaustion. Landry responded with a middle finger gesture, the motion casual and friendly. "If that meeting is at 8, then we better get this one out of here so we can get some rest," Connor said. He gestured to Sammy, who still stood with that blank expression on his face. They needed to finish this, to put the final nail in the coffin of the old regime. Landry walked over to Sammy, staring him down. The man who had ruled with fear and violence now looked small and pathetic. All the bluster and threats had evaporated, leaving behind only a broken man. "I hope all that liquor has helped keep your muscles loose, because you're going to need it," Landry said. He grabbed onto Sammy's shoulder, his grip firm. Then he shoved him toward one of the still-functioning golf carts. Sammy stumbled but caught himself, his feet shuffling as he moved. Ace grabbed a canvas bag that Clyde was holding, slinging it over his shoulder before he and Connor got in the cart with Landry and Sammy. The rest stayed behind, watching as the vehicle rolled away. "See if you can't round up a few working golf carts so we can do some rounds to make sure that curfew holds. Brody will show you where," Landry said. The others looked to Brody, who gave them a nod. He knew where the spare carts were kept, and he was eager to help. This was his chance to prove himself, to show that he belonged. Landry hit the gas pedal, the golf cart picking up speed. The occupants were silent, enjoying the hard-won peace. The night air was cool against their faces, and the community was quiet around them. It took a couple minutes for them to get over to the docks, which were empty. The water lapped against the wooden planks, a gentle rhythm that was almost soothing. The moon reflected off the surface of the lake, casting silver light across the dark water. In the distance, they could see the far shore, a black line separating water from sky. "All right, Sammy, about time for you to cast off," Landry said. The group escorted Sammy over to the edge of the dock. Connor gave him a shove in the direction of a canoe that was bobbing in the water. The small boat rocked with the movement, water sloshing against its sides. "The oars are in it. If you want my advice, get across as fast as you can. because with all the noise we've been making tonight, you're going to have company sooner than you think," Landry said. Ace threw the canvas bag at Sammy. The former boss caught it, his hands fumbling with the straps before he secured his grip. He glared at his former employee, hatred burning in his eyes. "Here's a little parting gift. There's a knife, couple bottles of water, and a change of clothes. Everything a growing boy needs in the zombie apocalypse," Ace said. Sammy's mouth twisted into a snarl, his voice low and venomous. "This isn't the last you're going to see of me. One day soon, I'm going to cut out your hearts with the knife inside this bag," Sammy said. The trio stared at Sammy, barely containing the chuckles from his threat. The words were absurd, the impotent rage of a beaten man. Landry and Ace exchanged a glance, amusement clear on their faces. That didn't sit well with Sammy. He muttered curses as he got into the canoe, his movements awkward and uncoordinated. It took him a moment to get situated with the oars, the boat rocking dangerously as he shifted his weight. Finally, he managed to push off away from the docks, the canoe drifting out into the dark water. The group watched him paddle across the lake slowly. His strokes were uneven, splashing more than propelling. But he made progress, the canoe moving away from shore and out into the open water. Eventually, he reached the halfway point, a small shape on the dark surface of the lake. "Do you really think it's wise to let him go like this?" Connor asked. Landry and Ace exchanged a glance, letting out a laugh. The sound was short and sharp, filled with dark humor. Connor looked between them, confused. A moment later, the darkness was illuminated by a giant fireball coming from the middle of the lake. The explosion was massive, a column of fire and smoke that erupted into the night sky. The shockwave rippled across the water, waves spreading out in perfect circles. Connor flinched at the unexpected explosion, his hand going to his weapon instinctively. The canoe was reduced to splinters, pieces of wood and debris raining down onto the water. Sammy met the same fate, his body torn apart by the blast. Nothing remained but burning wreckage and churning water. He looked over to Ace, who had the detonator in his hand. The device was small, just a simple remote trigger. Ace's thumb was still on the button, and a smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Who said we were letting him go?" Ace asked. Landry turned to Connor, his expression serious but satisfied. "Why make it easy for him with a bullet to the head, when we could make his last moments filled with the terror of knowing he was totally alone out there?" Landry asked. Connor thought about it for a moment, watching the flames die down on the water. The burning debris was already sinking, disappearing beneath the surface. It was brutal, but there was a certain justice to it. Sammy had terrorized people, made them feel helpless and afraid. Now he'd experienced that same fear in his final moments. "I like how you boys roll," Connor said. "That's good, because we're about to be neighbors." Chapter 8. 36 hours later, Landry sat at the edge of the docks, a brown paper bag lunch sitting beside him. The sun was high overhead, warming his face and shoulders. It was a good feeling, one he hadn't allowed himself to enjoy in weeks. He reached into the bag, pulling out a sandwich and a bottle of water. The sandwich was simple, just some meat and cheese on bread, but it tasted better than anything he'd eaten in recent memory. He took a moment to savor them as he looked out across the lake. The water was calm, reflecting the blue sky like a mirror. In the distance, he could see the far shore, the buildings and houses that lined it. Somewhere over there, creatures were wandering, searching for prey. But here, inside the walls of Lake Las Vegas, there was peace. This was the first time since the apocalypse had begun that he felt truly relaxed, like he could finally breathe. The weight that had been pressing down on him for weeks had lifted. Sammy was gone, the community was safe, and for the first time he could think about the future without feeling dread. As he sat there, enjoying the quiet, he heard footsteps coming up behind him. The wooden planks of the dock creaked under the weight. He turned to see Connor walking up, his large frame casting a shadow across the boards. "Mind if I join you?" Connor asked. "There's plenty of room. Have a seat," Landry said. The large bodyguard took a seat beside him, his legs dangling over the edge of the dock. His boots hung just above the water, close enough that a good splash would soak them. Landry reached into his bag and pulled out a small packet of chips. The plastic crinkled as he opened it up, the smell of barbecue seasoning wafting out. He offered one to Connor, who graciously accepted. Connor popped the chip in his mouth, chewing slowly as if trying to memorize the taste. "I'm going to miss barbecue flavor once it's gone," Connor said. Landry shook his head, a small smile on his face. "That stuff keeps for years, and with the number of restaurants that are around here, I think you'll be all right," Landry said. Connor let out a laugh, the sound genuine and warm. Landry offered him another chip, which he accepted. They sat there in companionable silence for a moment, just eating and watching the water. It was nice, normal even. A small slice of the world that used to be. "It's been a hell of a few weeks, hasn't it?" Connor asked. "That's an understatement. Honestly, I'm kind of amazed we've lived this long," Landry said. Connor turned to look at him, his expression shifting to something more confident. "Speak for yourself," Connor said. He spoke with false bravado, his chest puffing out slightly. But he quickly broke into laughter, unable to maintain the facade. Landry looked over at him, and both of them descended into laughter at the absurdity of it. They'd both been inches from death multiple times in the past few days. Luck had played as much of a role in their survival as skill had. Their joy was interrupted by a large moving truck pulling up across the lake. The vehicle rolled to a stop on the far shore, its engine cutting off with a final rumble. The back was covered with a rolling door, hiding whatever or whoever was inside. "I was wondering when they were going to get here," Landry said. "The new residents?" Connor asked. "Yep, Sullivan and Cooper went over this morning to get them moved," Landry said. The duo watched from the docks as the two soldiers got out of the front of the truck. They moved around to the back, working together to lift the rolling door. The metal rattled as it slid upward, revealing the cargo area. A moment later, Ace jumped out, his rifle at the ready as he moved up the road to keep watch. His posture was alert, his eyes scanning the surroundings for any threats. Following him out of the truck was a collection of civilians, ranging in ages. There were young adults, middle-aged people, even a few children. They climbed down carefully, helping each other to the ground. Some carried bags, while others held nothing but the clothes on their backs. They looked tired, worn down by weeks of living in the tunnels beneath the city. Sullivan and 3 people walked down the docks on the far shore. They got into a boat that was tied up there, the craft rocking as they climbed aboard. Sullivan took the oars and began rowing, the boat cutting through the calm water as it made the trip across the lake. "Looks like my lunch break is over," Landry said. He stuffed the remaining chips back into the bag and stood up, brushing crumbs off his pants. Connor pulled himself up off the dock as well, both men walking around to where the boat would land. They positioned themselves at the edge, ready to help. The boat glided up to the dock, bumping gently against the wood. Sullivan held it steady as Landry and Connor extended their hands down, pulling up the people from the boat. The first out was a woman wearing a paramedic's uniform. The outfit was dirty and worn, but the patches and insignia were still visible. Her name badge read, Harper, the letters clear despite the grime. She grabbed Landry's hand, and he hauled her up onto the dock. The next out was her partner, a man with the name badge Mitchell. He looked equally exhausted, but there was relief in his eyes as he stepped onto solid ground. "Thank you," Harper said. Her voice was soft but sincere. She looked around at the community, taking in the houses and the manicured lawns. It must have seemed like a paradise after the tunnels. "It's my pleasure. Welcome to Lake Las Vegas," Landry said. The 2 paramedics nodded as they stepped out of the way, moving down the dock to make room. Connor moved into position, reaching down to help pull up the next person. This one was different. He was a hulking beast of a man, all muscle and height. His arms were thick as tree trunks, and his shoulders were broad enough to fill a doorway. This was Diesel, the leader of the community in the truck. Connor gripped his hand and pulled, the big man coming up onto the dock with surprising ease despite his size. "Welcome to Lake Las Vegas. I'm Connor, and that's Landry," Connor said. Diesel looked between them, sizing them up with a practiced eye. He seemed satisfied with what he saw. "The name's Diesel, and I look after these people," Diesel said. His voice was deep and gravelly, the kind of voice that commanded attention. Sullivan climbed up onto the dock behind him, nodding in agreement with the statement. "Diesel is good people, pulled my ass out of the fire, and looked after some VIPs like they were his own," Sullivan said. Diesel gave a nonchalant shrug, the gesture humble despite the praise. "I just did what I thought was right, nothing more," Diesel said. Landry extended his hand and Diesel shook it. The man's grip was firm, but not crushing, the handshake of someone who knew his own strength. Sounds like you're going to be a fine addition to the community, Landry said. Whatever you need, all you have to do is ask, Diesel said. Landry appreciated the offer. They would need people like Diesel in the days to come, people who could lead and protect. When we get everyone across safely, if you can help us break them up into groups, that would be helpful. We have plenty of space for everyone, but some people are going to have roommates, Landry said. Diesel nodded, already thinking through the logistics. He'd been managing people in the tunnels for weeks, so this wouldn't be anything new. We've all been living in the tunnels for years. I don't think anybody is going to complain about having to share a room with someone, Diesel said. Landry and Connor exchanged a glance before chuckling. There was clearly some miscommunication here. Landry motioned back to one of the giant houses nearby, a massive estate with columns and balconies. The smallest house here has 10 bedrooms. So, when I say roommates, I mean they're going to be living under the same roof as other people, not sharing a bunk bed, Landry said. Diesel let out a laugh at his misunderstanding, the sound booming across the dock. The idea of having that much space must have seemed absurd after living in cramped tunnels. That might be a little too much for some of my people, but I think we can learn to get by, Diesel said. Yeah, Landry could imagine the adjustment would be difficult. Going from underground survival to luxury estates would be a shock for anyone. We also have an 18-hole golf course inside the perimeter, so if anybody feels the need to go camping, we have the protected space and the supplies, Landry said. Diesel gave him a thankful nod, his expression thoughtful. I know a few people that will appreciate that, Diesel said. Some folks just preferred the outdoors, even in the middle of an apocalypse. Having the option would help them settle in. Harper stepped forward, her voice tentative as she spoke up. Excuse me, Landry? Harper asked. Yes, Miss Harper, Landry asked. Please call me Lola, Harper said. Landry nodded as she continued, giving her his full attention. Is there some place where we might be of use? Lola asked. The question made sense. Medical professionals would want to get back to work, to feel useful again. Landry smiled, glad he had an answer for her. There is. We have a small community med center, but nobody to really operate it. It's yours if you want it, Landry said. Lola and her partner shared a nod, accepting the offer without hesitation. The relief on their faces was clear. They would have purpose again, a way to help people. Before they could continue, Connor's phone began ringing. The sound was jarring in the peaceful setting, a reminder that the outside world still existed. He pulled it from his pocket, looking at the screen. The number was unfamiliar, not one he had saved. I knew those telemarketers would survive the end of the world, Connor said. Everybody let out a laugh at the joke, the tension breaking. Connor tapped the screen and brought the phone to his ear. This is Connor, Connor said. He listened for a moment, his expression shifting from amused to serious. Then he spoke again. All right, hang on, Connor said. He pulled the phone down and tapped the speaker button. His voice carried a note of authority as he spoke. All right, Foster, you're on speaker. I got Corporal Sullivan and a few others here, Connor said. Sullivan's head snapped up at the name, his posture straightening. Captain, is that you? Sullivan asked. The voice that came through the speaker was clear and confident, carrying the weight of command. Yep, it's me. How you holding up down there? Foster asked. We're getting everybody from the tunnels moved into their new digs, Sullivan said. That's excellent news, Sullivan, Foster said. There was genuine pleasure in his voice, relief that his people were safe and settled. Then his tone shifted, becoming more businesslike. I wanted to touch base and let you know that we're about ready up here to move on to the next phase of securing the city, Foster said. Connor leaned closer to the phone, making sure his voice would carry clearly. That's good to hear, Foster. What do you need from us? Connor asked. Nothing at the moment, but in the coming days we're going to be running some of the party buses through the southern part of town and clearing it out. When we're ready, we're going to need some intel, Foster said. Party buses. The term had taken on a new meaning in the apocalypse. They were armored vehicles used to draw out and eliminate large groups of creatures. Connor nodded, even though Foster couldn't see him. I'll have my people scouting for where the hordes are. We'll be ready when you are, Connor said. I appreciate that, Connor. We're going to need all hands on deck, because it's time to take Las Vegas back from the dead. The end.